Daf Yomi, Tractate Zevachim, page 14a, top of the page, with the words Kol she'ino al mizbeach hamitzon kishlamim, ein bo mishum pigul, that any offering whose blood is not sprinkled on the external altar, like a peace offering, is not subject to the halachot of pigul. If so, pigul does not apply to inner sin offerings at all. Ella, rather, rather, both this brayta and that brayta are in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis, and the apparent contradiction between them is not difficult. Here, the brayta that maintains that one cannot render the offering pigul while dipping his finger in the blood is referring to the external sin offerings, since dipping one's finger in order to sprinkle the blood on the external altar is not considered an essential rite. There, the brayta that maintains that one can render the offering pigul while performing this rite is referring to the inner sin offerings. The Gemara asks, isn't it obvious that one cannot render the offering pigul while dipping his finger in the blood of the external sin offerings? The statement, and the priest shall dip his finger in the blood, Leviticus 4:6, is not written with regard to these offerings. Since it is clearly not an essential rite, why was it necessary for the writers to teach that improper intent while performing it cannot render the offering pigul? Itzrich, the Gemara answers it was necessary for the writers to teach this. So it was necessary for the brayta to teach this, as otherwise it might enter your mind to say that since it is written with regard to an external sin offering, and the priest shall take of the blood of the sin offering with his finger, Leviticus 4:34, and therefore if a monkey comes and places blood on the hand of the priest, and the priest must take blood from the vessel again to perform the mitzvah, as stated in the verse, it is considered as though the statement, and the priest shall dip his finger in the blood, is written with regard to an external sin offering as well. Kamash Malan, therefore the brayta teaches that dipping one's finger in the blood of an external sin offering is an inessential rite, and one cannot render the offering pigul while performing it. Cannot render a pigul while performing it. And as it is for this reason that that the phrase "and the priest shall dip his finger in the blood" is not written with regard to this offering, but rather "and the priest shall take of the blood of the sin offering with his finger," which indicates this halacha, that the priest must actively take the blood in his hand, and also indicates that halacha, dipping one's finger in the blood is not an essential rite and cannot render the offering pigul. Rabbi Shimon Nachshir B'Hiluch, Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, Moide Rabbi Shimon Be'olachas Chatos Apinimios, Shimach Sheva Poseres Bo, Oy Moide Shein Yochol Mivatlo. The Mishnah teaches that Rabbi Shimon deems the offering fit if the prohibited intent was during the rite of conveying the blood to the altar. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish says, Rabbi Shimon concedes that prohibited intent during the conveying of the blood of the inner sin offering disqualifies them, since with regard to those offerings, it is an indispensable rite, because the blood must be sprinkled inside the sanctuary, and the offering cannot be slaughtered inside the sanctuary. Conveying the blood into the sanctuary is always necessary for such offerings. The Gemara asks, but doesn't Rabbi Shimon say that with regard to any offering whose blood is not sprinkled on the external altar, like a peace offering, one is not liable to be punished with karet for eating it due to the prohibition of pigul? In other words, the halacha of pigul does not apply to inner sin offerings at all. Amar Yossi ben Bechanina, Modi hayali so nikar lechamer ma shelo lishman shu b'shlamim pasul lechatos putzes mana shepoes b'shlamim eno din shiv so lechatos. Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Chanina, says Rabbi Shimon concedes that although intent to consume an inner sin offering after its designated time does not render pigul, it disqualifies the offering due to an a fortiori interest, a kal chomer. Just as sacrifice, not for its sake, which is valid in the case of a peace offering, is nevertheless not valid in the case of a sin offering, as stated in the Mishnah 2a, so too isn't it logical that a sacrifice with intent to consume it beyond its designated time, which disqualifies peace offerings, should that definitely disqualify sin offerings? The Gemara asks, and we found a source for the halacha that the intent to consume an inner sin offering beyond its designated time disqualifies it, according to Rabbi Shimon. From where do we derive that intent to consume it outside its designated area also disqualifies it? If we derive it from the case of intent to consume it beyond its designated time, one may respond, what is notable about intent to consume it beyond the designated time? Beyond its designated time, it is notable in that it can render an offering pigul, for partaking of which one is liable to receive karet. If we derive it from the case of intent not for its sake, one may respond, what is notable about sacrifice not for its sake? It is notable in that this disqualification applies even to sacrifice on a private altar during the era when such altars were permitted. By contrast, intent to consume the offering outside its designated area is relevant to sacrifice on a private altar which has no designated area. The Gemara answers with regard to what offering does disqualification due to intent not for its sake apply. It applies to a paschal offering and a sin offering. Since a paschal offering and a sin offering may not be sacrificed on a private altar, this factor is irrelevant. One may therefore derive from the case of intent not for its sake that intent to consume the offering outside its designated area disqualifies it. And if you wish to say that it is derived from the juxtaposition of the halacha of intent to consume the offering beyond its designated time with the halacha of intent to consume it outside its designated area, the very states that if any flesh of the sacrifice of his peace offerings is at all eaten on the third day, it shall not be accepted, neither shall be imputed to the one who offers it. It shall be an abhorrent thing. Pigul, Leviticus 7:18. The statement on the third day it shall not be accepted is referring to intent to consume the offering beyond its designated time. And this seemingly superfluous statement, neither it shall be imputed to the one who offers it, it shall be pigul, is referring to intent to consume it outside the designated area. Such juxtaposition indicates that there are parallel halachot in the two cases, even if they are dissimilar. Amarava, im timshalama, Rabbi Shimon Sofer la, kivrei Jamal ben ha'ulam, במזבח צפון אין מחשבה מועלת בעולה חטויס אבנימיוס אלא מפסח אולם ולפנים. Rava says, if you say that Rabbi Shimon holds, according to the opinion of his son Rabbi Elazar, who says that the area between the entrance hall and the altar is considered part of the north of the temple courtyard, the only place where a sin offering may be slaughtered, he must also hold that prohibited intent while conveying the blood or the inner sin offerings is effective to disqualify them only from the doorway of the entrance all inward. Prohibited intent before the priest reaches the doorway of the entrance hall does not disqualify the offering, as conveying the blood to the doorway is not necessary. The offering could have been slaughtered at the doorway in the first place. ואם תמצא לומר סובר לא כל יהוד דאמר תוך הזוהר מקדש אין מחשבה מועלת בלכת פסילוק בזיכין And if you say that Rabbi Shimon holds it according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, who says that the interior of the temple courtyard sanctifies offerings, meaning that offerings can be sacrificed on the courtyard floor as if it were part of the altar, prohibited intent, while conveying the removed bowls of frankincense from the table in the sanctuary. To burn them on the external altar is effective to disqualify them only while conveying them from the doorway of the sanctuary outward to the entrance hall. Since the table can be placed anywhere in the sanctuary, conveying the bowls of frankincense in the sanctuary itself is unnecessary. And once the priest exits the study hall to the temple courtyard, the frankincense could theoretically be burned immediately. Rava continues, and if you say that Rabbi Shimon holds that the sanctity of the sanctuary and the entrance hall are one and the same, and the table can be placed in the entrance hall as well, prohibited intent is effective only while conveying the frankincense from the doorway of the entrance hall outward, meaning in the doorway of the entrance hall itself. And if you say that he also holds that inside the doorway is considered like inside the entrance hall, then the table can be placed in the doorway too, and prohibited intent is not effective while conveying the frankincense even one step. Rather, it is effective only during the moment when the frankincense is taken out of the doorway to the courtyard, the time it takes the priest to stretch out his hand to place the bowls on the courtyard floor. Sofer halacha shelo beregel shlo lishma halacha im machshava moeles kanal. And if you say that he also holds that conveying an offering and not by foot is not considered conveying, permitted intent is not effective at all while conveying the bowls of frankincense. Amar le Abai le Amore de Rav Chizda ba'imene Rav Chizda halacha b'zamahu. Abai said to Rav Chizda's interpreter, "Ask Rav Chizda for me, what is the halacha with regard to a non-priest conveying the blood? Is the offering disqualified, as in the case where a non-priest performs any other sacrificial rite that may be performed only by priests?" Amar le. So he said. So the interpreter said back to him, or Rav Chizda said back to him, "Keshera umikra misayani v'shchutus pesach." ויזרקו הכהנים את האדם מידם ורבים מפשיטים. Rav Chizda said to him, the offering remains fit, and a verse supports my ruling. As they slaughtered the paschal offering, and the priests sprinkled the blood, which they received of their hand, and the Levites flayed them. 2 Chronicles 35:11. Apparently, priests are required only for the sprinkling of the blood on the altar and later rites. Just as slaughter may be performed by non-priests, so can the collection and the conveying of the blood be performed by them. Mesa Risheshis Zar the One. Risheshis raises an objection from Braita if a non-priest or an acute mourner. And now we turn to page 14b on the top, and to be continued. Vital, continuing Daf Yomi, Tractate Zevachim. Zevachim, 14b on the top of the page. It was the last lines were previous Amud was Mesa Rav Sheshes Zalvoin. Rav Sheshes raises an objection from a Braita if a non-priest or an acute mourner, top of 14b now, with the words Shikor. Ubalmum Bikabala Bailach Vizrikom Pasul Mechen Yoish Tevechen Smoel Balmum, it says, and we just finished in the 72 names counting. The last name was Mem Vav Mem yesterday, which is like today, and here we're seeing the word Balmum. So it's interesting. Shikor Ubalmum Bikabala Bailach Vizrikom Pasul Mechen Yoish Tevechen Smoel Tiyufta. A drunk priest or a blemished priest performs the rites of collection, conveying or sprinkling the blood. The offering is disqualified. And likewise, it is disqualified if a priest performs any of these rites while sitting. And this is likewise the halacha if a priest performs any of these rites with his left hand. The Gemara concludes, this is a conclusive refutation of Rav Chisda's ruling. If a non-priest conveys the blood, it is disqualified. The Gemara asks, but didn't Rav Chisda state a verse as proof that the offering is not disqualified? The verse states that the priests sprinkled the blood after receiving it from non-priests. The Gemara answers, the verse described a case where the non-priest served as a bench. The priest would give the blood to the non-priests to hold it for them, and would then take it and sprinkle the blood. The non-priest would not convey the blood to the altar. Okay. Rabbi Yosef Damar Telvayu, Walach Bizao. Machloikes, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbanan, Rabbi Shimon Damar, Avoida, Shef Shlevatla, Lavoi, Ksher Rabzar, Rabbanan, Pasuda. Rabbi and Rabbi Yosef both say that the case of a non-priest conveying the blood is subject to a dispute between Rabbi Shimon and the rabbis. According to Rabbi Shimon, who says that a dispensable rite is not classified as a true rite, and therefore it does not disqualify the offering if performed with prohibited intent, the offering is fit even if the conveying of the blood is performed by a non-priest. According to the rabbis, who hold that a dispensable rite is classified as a true rite, the conveying of the blood is not valid if performed by a non-priest. Abaye said to him, Abaye said to him, but what about slaughter, which is an indispensable rite, and yet the offering is fit even if it is performed by a non-priest? He said to Abaye, slaughter, though indispensable, is not classified as a sacrificial rite at all. Therefore, it need not be performed by a priest. Villa, is that really not so? Gemara says, is it really true that a non-priest can slaughter? It says, but doesn't Rabbi Zera say, or Rav says, if the slaughter of a red heifer is performed by a non-priest, it is not valid. And Rav said about this halacha is derived from the phrases Allah for the priest, Numbers 19 verse 3, and statute, Numbers 19 verse 2, which are written with regard to the red heifer. The mention of Elazar indicates that slaughter must be performed by a priest, and the term statute indicates that one may not deviate from any of the details of the service as delineated in the verses. If one does, the heifer is disqualified. Shani para the Gemara answers, the red heifer is different, as it is not an offering. It has the sanctity of items consecrated for the temple maintenance. The alcohol that govern its service is therefore differ from those of offerings proper. The Gemara asks, but does this not prove the point all the more? If slaughtering an animal consecrated for temple maintenance is tantamount to sacrificial rite, can slaughtering offerings which are sacrificed on the altar not be considered a sacrificial rite? Amar Rav Shisha b'rei Ravidi midid hayamres negoim dilav avoidehi by kahuna. Rav Shisha, son of Edi, said the slaughter of a red heifer is considered just as it is in the case of shades of leprous marks, which are deemed ritually pure or impure by a priest. Although this is not a sacrificial rite, it still requires a member of the priesthood to perform it. Therefore, the requirement that the red heifer be slaughtered by a priest does not prove that it is classified as a sacrificial rite. Okay. Yeah, I love like Der Avoide Chef Zevachim פסול וזר לכסיב יקריב הכהן את הכל ויקטיר מהמזבח יממה זו הלכה זבר ומחמש. The Gemara further challenges the premise of Rabba and Rav Yosef. The Gemara challenges. Hold on. The Gemara further challenges the premise of Rabba and Rav Yosef that a dispensable rite can be performed by a non-priest. But what about conveying the limbs of the offering to the camp, which is a dispensable rite, as the offering can be slaughtered next to the ramp, and nevertheless, if it is performed by a non-priest, the offering is disqualified as it is written, and the priest shall sacrifice the whole and make it smoke upon the altar. Leviticus 1:13, and the master says this is referring to conveying the limbs to the ramp. Hecha de gali gali, vehecha de lo gali lo gali. The Gemara answers, in a case where the verse explicitly revealed that a rite must be performed by a priest, it revealed it. But in a case where the Torah did not reveal it, it did not reveal it. With regard to conveying the blood, the Torah does not state explicitly that a priest is required. V'lav kol dechein hu uma holach. It's called dechein, not kol shekain. It's called dechein. I wonder why. V'lav kol dechein hu ma holach zevachim lekedesh. Delo miakva kapara by kahuna. The Gemara challenges, but is it not all the more so obvious? Just as conveying the limbs to the ramp requires that the conveyor be a member of the priesthood, even though it does not prevent atonement, if not performed at all, since the atonement was already affected by sprinkling the blood. All the more so, is it not clear that concerning conveying the blood and sprinkling it on the altar, where the failure to convey it and sprinkle it on the altar prevents atonement, it must be that the conveyor be a member of the priesthood? This difficulty remains unresolved, but it's not a teiku, interestingly enough. I wonder why some are unanswered and unresolved and some are teikus. Okay, let's continue with Ranami Amarullah Amar Rabbi Elazar. It was also stated that Ula says, or Elazar says, in a case where conveying the blood is performed by a non-priest, the offering is disqualified even according to Rabbi Shimon. Amar Lahu Halacha Shalom Regel Regel Shema Halacha or Lo Shema Halacha. A dilemma was raised before the sages. Is conveying the blood not by foot, but rather by passing it by hand to another priest considered conveying, or is it not considered conveying? Is it considered conveying or not? Can the rite be performed in this manner? Tashima, come in here. Chen Yoshev, Chen small pasul. The Gemara suggests coming here evidence from the Braita, and likewise if the priest collected, conveyed, or sprinkled the blood while sitting, and likewise if he performed any of these rites with his left hand, the offering is disqualified. Since only sitting is listed, one consequently infers that if the priest conveyed the blood while standing, but in a manner similar to sitting, meaning by outstretching his hand without walking, the offering is fit. Evidently, conveying the blood does not require walking. Dilma Yoeshev Nikashev Mishof Omed Dumyad Yoshev Vinayad Purta. The Gemara rejects this inference. Perhaps when the bride states sitting is sitting, it is referring to one who conveys the blood by moving toward the altar while sitting on the ground in such a manner that he rubs himself against the floor of the courtyard as he pulls himself forward. If so, the parallel case of standing in a manner similar to sitting, in a case where the priest moves forward a bit. Perhaps if he does not move at all and merely outstretches his hand, the rite is not valid. Tashima. The Gemara suggests coming here proof from the Mishnah. Shachat in 64a. Psachim 64a. Shachat Yisrael v'kibel kohen. Nas lechavero lechavero lechavero. An Israelite would slaughter the Paschal offering, and a priest would collect the blood. The priest would be lined up from the place where the limb was slaughtered until the altar. The priest who collected the blood would immediately hand it to another priest standing next to him, and the other priest would pass it to another, and so forth, until it would reach the altar. Evidently, the blood can be passed from hand to hand. It need not be conveyed by foot. The Gemara answers, there too, the priest would move a bit with their feet while passing the blood forward. The Gemara asks, but what is the Mishnah teaching us in this description, if not that the blood need not be conveyed by foot? The Gemara answers, it teaches that in a multitude of people is the king's glory. Proverbs 14:28. It honors God when the temple service is performed by a multitude of priests. Amar kibel hakasher v'nazan lepasul yazir lekasher. Gemara suggests, come in here, another resolution from the Mishnah in 32a. If a priest who is fit for a temple service collected the blood in a vessel and gave it to an unfit individual standing next to the altar, that individual should return it to the fit priest, so that he may perform a complete act of conveying the blood to the altar. Evidently, the blood must be conveyed to the altar by foot. If conveying by hand were valid, another priest could simply take the blood from the unfit person and complete the conveying of the blood to the altar. Ema, the Gemara rejects this inference. Ema, yachzor hakasher v'yikabla. The Gemara rejects this inference, saying that the wording of the Mishnah should be amended. Instead of stating that the unfit person should return the vessel to the fit priest, it should state the fit priest, even another priest, should then receive it from the unfit person. If so, the Mishnah proves nothing about the conveying of land. Itmar, we learned, Amar Ulam Rabbi Yochanan Holacha Shelo B'Regel Shelo Shma Halacha. It was stated, Ula says that Rabbi Yochanan says conveying the blood not by foot is not considered conveying. To be continued, God willing, the next time.